Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives Podcast. Today, I am stoked to be joined by David and Grayson Carothers of Florida Risk Partners. David and Grayson, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Wouldn't miss it. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to get going. Just a little bit of background on each of them. David, as most people know, is the principal of Florida Risk Partners, an independent risk management and insurance firm. With nearly 2 decades of insurance experience, David is widely recognized as a driving force behind agency transformation, known for blending deep insurance expertise with entrepreneurial execution. He's the founder of Killing Commercial, a sales training platform helping independent producers scale middle market books of business. David is also the host of the Power Producers Podcast, a go-to resource for agency leaders nationwide. Lastly, David is a true family man. When he's not enjoying time with his wife and 4 kids, you can find him trying out a new recipe on his smoker and attending a Tampa Bay Bucks game, a Lightning or Rays game. Grayson is an emerging professional in the commercial insurance industry and the leader of the private risk division at Florida Risk Partners. As a certified work comp advisor, he brings a modern approach to risk management while helping families and businesses protect what matters most. His journey into sales began with a simple idea: ask better questions. As a new producer, he started recording daily conversations with David during their daily commute. This series quickly gained momentum, becoming a full-length daily sales reader under the title of Driven to Close. Gentlemen, thanks again for being here. Really excited to kind of have you guys kick off our Family Dynamics series. So just to give us a little bit of background, David, if you would, tell us a little bit about Florida Risk Partners.
Turned 10 this year, man. Believe it or not, somehow we've survived and we've beat the odds and we've made it a decade. Florida Risk started out primarily as a commercial middle market agency, for no other reason, Brad, than that's all I've ever done. When I was a producer, I was in the middle market. When it was time for me to launch the agency, it was just natural for me to go there. And it's one of those things where I never really wanted to do small commercial, never really wanted anything to do with personal lines, probably because of my own mental blocks from working in the middle market. And next thing you know, you've got somebody griping about their homeowners going up $20 a year and they want you to go to 50 carriers to get that money back. And I know what I'm capable of and what I'm not. And so I just said, you know what, mentally, I can't go between those 2 calls on a daily basis. And then when Grayson came in to the agency, was shortly after COVID. Things had changed a little bit. The market here was absolutely terrible. He wanted to learn the industry. And while I'm of the belief there's really no translation from writing personal lines in Florida moving into middle market commercial, he seems to have found a home there. So there may not be any moving into middle market commercial for him for as well as he's done to this point. And it was an interesting time for us because I feel like we've seen residential solar be on the decline a little bit down here with some of the changes that we've had with the roofing contractors and stuff. But at that time, it was in its heyday. And we just simply made the decision, you know what, let's figure out if we can build a personal lines practice around Grayson specifically in the solar industry, because if you had solar at that time in Florida, it's still the case, and you have excess power in the power grid, they require you, if you're going to sell it back to them, they require you to have $1 million umbrella in order to do it. So we just started getting calls out of the blue for monoline umbrella. And I'm like, wait a minute, man, we could get a look at the home, get a look at the auto if we're looking at umbrella. And I mean, I don't have a problem giving credit to that process to Jason Kilgo. I completely ripped him off, and he's cool with it because he teaches it to everybody. Yeah. But it's pretty much the same thing he did when he was at Geico. And over the time, as we were adding these monoline umbrella accounts to the agency, we really didn't have markets for home and auto like you would in a normal agency because I built it around middle market. So market started to turn a little bit. We're actually, pretty much getting into the soft market here right now. It's definitely softened up. And so for the last 6 months, I've spent my time just helping Grayson build out the technology, the automations, the marketing, and the carrier offering that we have to build a full and robust private risk offering, which I'm comfortable in saying we now have. It matches what we're able to do with middle market commercial. The thing that I would tell you is I'm building the foundation to a house that I built on stilts. Everybody else that I know, you included, Brad, you start with more of a main street style agency. You're writing home, you're writing auto, you're writing some commercial stuff. I had none of the stuff that's really what keeps agencies lights on. I had bigger accounts that if I lost them, it hurt. And I sleep better at night now knowing that we have a little bit more diversification in what we can offer. And at the same time, it allowed Grayson to kind of discover where he felt comfortable and really fit in well inside the industry.
I touch on it for. I just want to back up just a little bit to what does the makeup of your team look like? How many people do you have?
We are heavy VAs, man. We run lean. We run really, really lean. So we have a team of total 14, 15 people. And of those, 6 of them are virtual professionals from overseas. So anything that we can do to outsource, we do that. We rely on our CRM that we've built, fully custom instance of HubSpot and all the automations and things that we do inside that. It does the work of 5 people easily.
So when did you start thinking about bringing Grayson on board or thought that might be a fit for the agency?
I think it's an interesting thing, man. One thing I think that's really important for everybody to know, and I'm not going to camp out on this because I don't very, very often, but I had an extremely negative experience being a partner with my own dad in the agency I was in prior to Florida Risk. That's water under the bridge at this point, but it probably left me a little gun shy for wanting to bring Grayson into the agency just because I know how that went. You can do two different things, man. You can run away from problems or you can run right at them and deal with them. And I've never been the type of person to run away from anything. And so I didn't really table it. I'll even let Grayson answer this. Honestly, he's probably a better one to answer it, but I don't remember that I ever even mentioned it to him. The way I remember it, he approached me and said, "Hey, what do you think can happen?" And, obviously Grayson lived through the other ordeal as well. So it made it, an interesting conversation, but what it did was it forced me to probably be the most deliberate and intentional in anything I've ever done inside the agency to make sure that the father-son relationship is separate as it can be from the professional relationship. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm pretty proud of ourselves. I think we've done a really good job of it. I don't think that we let anything that happens. I mean, obviously, we leave, go home from work and we're sitting on the couch watching a Lightning game or whatever. And it's going to be natural. You're an insurance guy too. We all end up talking about, stuff that happened at work or whatever, but it doesn't, that doesn't define, I don't feel like that defines our relationship.
Yeah.
And so I was open to the idea, but it came with rules. And I wanted to make sure those rules were clear and defined in the very beginning for him to join the firm. And one of those was I wanted him to go work at Publix for a couple of years and understand customer service. I came from the grocery industry. Yeah. I'm a big believer that if you work in retail, groceries, or grocery restaurants, any of that stuff, and you learn how to deal with the public at their absolute worst, because that's what you get when you work in those roles, that's a transferable skill set that you can use in the industry that we have now. I also wanted to see if he was disciplined enough to be able to do it and stick it out for a couple of years, which he did.
Yeah, it's a good segue. Grayson, what intrigued you about the possibility of moving into the insurance agency?
I had probably had my first job at Publix for about 6 months before I decided to call my dad one day when he was out on a conference trip and just said, "Hey, I've got something I want to talk to you about." And as I'm sure you can imagine, a million things probably ran through his head on what I was calling him to talk about.
Yeah, I was worried about whether or not I was going to be a grandfather or something.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
It's always the worst case scenario that enters your head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just basically said, like, "Hey, what would it look like for me to get involved in what you're doing? as I've grown up, I've never been hungry. I've never been hurting for any of the things that I've asked for. And I know that you get to go and visit these cool places when you go out for business. And so I admired the lifestyle that being in the insurance industry could provide, because that's what I was used to seeing my dad have growing up. And so I asked him what was the likelihood of me being able to get involved. And as he said, having some family experience in the business and things, he wanted to lay it out and make sure that I was going to be a right fit for what we were doing. And so he told me I needed to work at my current job for another 2 years and move up the ranks a little bit through there and get some more responsibility with, as he said, dealing with people. And I would say that working at a grocery store like that is a perfect thing to do before getting involved in, especially personal lines, because you're dealing with a lot of people who are coming in and they need assistance, and you deal with people complaining about things that are out of your control, like the price of this or the shelf this is on and all that kind of stuff. And so I just followed the roadmap that he set out for me, and anywhere along the way, I could have decided that this wasn't worth, the investment of my time to see it through and to go do it. But I trusted what, he laid out for me, and here we are.
Well, I would tell you too, we took a little bit of a creative approach, man, because Grayson's he has an advantage other people don't, just because we have the podcast and the amount of video content and stuff that I put out. And so his initial job in the agency had nothing to do with insurance. He was a video editor and a podcast editor. And so I wanted him to do that for a year. It was funny because he didn't know this, but I remember when we went to the agency success conference out in Phoenix, he was at the registration table and somebody asked him, what's it like working with your dad? And he's like, oh, it's great. I'm editing these podcasts, and man, when it's time for me to get into insurance, I'm going to know everything I need to do, because I get to hear all these people that are really good at their job talking about it and the technology and all of that other stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's because your old man grew up watching Mr. Miyagi, man. I mean, I know how to make this thing happen. He might not listen to me the same way that he would listen to Micah Salas if I had him on the podcast, or Kevin Ring or somebody like that. Yeah. And so that was a very intentional thing, was to get him exposed to the content and everything. And he did well with that. And to the point that he actually, in addition to his responsibilities with Personal Lines here, he runs that team of video editors that we have now, overseas that do all of our content production, our social and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a good skill set. And it was twofold, Brad. It was, number one, I wanted him to get the content to go through his head by osmosis. But number two, I wanted him to gain a skill set that was transferable to any industry, so that if anything happened to me, God forbid, that he would be okay and be able to go and find a job doing something that's usually, needed in a lot of different businesses.
Grayson, what kind of things? So you saw the lifestyle and the potential, the earning potential and the lifestyle potential. What reservations did you have? Maybe concerns with working with Dad?
To be honest, there weren't too many concerns that I really had. He didn't really talk too much about the stuff leading up to his insurance experience, but ever since I was a little kid, I've been working with my dad in one way or another, and many of his ventures and businesses from when I was a kid. So I had multiple years of experience of working with him and being an employee of his before ever getting into insurance. And not that there were no nerves or anything about the learning curve I was going to have to try and take on an actual profession like insurance, but I never really doubted the ability to find success and have a good working relationship with him, just because of all the stuff that we had done before insurance was ever in the picture.
Man, I used to work overnight shift, man. When I was at Target, my last job was fixing replenishment processes that were broken at stores all over the country, in addition to opening new ones. And so a lot of my responsibilities happened on graveyard shift. So I worked graveyard shift. When he was young, I would get off a graveyard shift, come home, grab some coffee and some breakfast. His mother would be headed off to work, and he was headed ride shotgun in my pickup truck, because I was going around and doing tree jobs and other things just to make as much money as I could. He's not lying. I mean, he's always had a hand in anything that we've done. And one of the things that I've been conscious about is and I think Grayson would agree with this, but with every one of my kids, they've had an opportunity to understand what it takes to earn, period. I don't care how old they are. They don't get handouts. We take nice trips, we do nice things, but if they want things in life, every one of my kids understands that comes at a cost, and they know they can equate that to work. So as long as Grayson was able to walk and do things, like he's not kidding. He's literally been involved in a bunch of different stuff. And you know what, Brad? It's so natural. I didn't even think about that. It's just who we are.
Yeah. David, I think you kind of touched on this just a little bit, a few comments back, about something maybe the intention and thought that you put in this when Grayson was coming on board. So talk about the approach of onboarding him, going from the videographer role into, actual insurance operations role, and what you put into setting him up for success from the very beginning.
I'm fortunate in that I've got a pretty robust network across the country of people that are a heck of a lot smarter than I am, that he can lean on and have relationships with, to ask questions and have an outlet other than me. I think that's really, really important. If I was the only one that he could go to, that would put a lot more strain on our relationship. So one of the things that I made sure that I did consciously was just let him start traveling with me. If I went to go speak at a Big Eye somewhere, or we went to, Cass's brain share or something like that, I took Grayson with me. And as a result, he's got a network of somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years at this point, but has his own relationships with people that I know equally as well. But he can go to them, have conversations and have friendships, do shop talk, whatever, and I'm not involved in it. That's something that's really important. I think a lot of people who sit in my chair would probably be a little bit concerned, or maybe just a little bit too controlling in giving him the freedom to go out and do that, because they would be worried about what he's saying to other people about what goes on here, right? I don't have any concern about that, because I want him to have that freedom. I know he has to have that. And then other than that, from an intentionality thing, probably the most difficult and most conscious thing that I've had to do is just literally take a deep breath a lot and say, let him figure it out. Let him figure it out on his own, and be patient as I can be in that process. You run an agency, I run an agency. We're both entrepreneurial, or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. And with that comes a skill set that is what allows us to be marginally successful, right? Yeah. And one of the things that I always tell people is I'm never going to lose an opportunity in life, because I make quick decisions. And if it works out, then it's awesome. And if it doesn't, I cut bait quick. But I'm never going to be left sitting here analyzing something to the point I miss an opportunity. And as Grayson's gone through and talked about different things with building out the personal lines for us, I just sit back, listen to what he says, and then offer whatever comment or support that I can give him. But I really want him to be the one to figure it out. And that's foreign, man. I'm a driver. I get up every day, boom, boom, boom. Let's get it done and call it a day. And that makes that's an extra wrinkle in the process.
Yeah. Well, talk about what a benefit it is to have a network of people, around the country and experts, specifically for what he's getting involved in right now in the personal lines, because that has not been your expertise.
Oh, no.
So he can't always lean on
more than I do about it. Yeah.
So that's huge. Grayson, talk about what it was like when you first started. It's like you have all this anticipation, and now I'm going to get into this business. I've started. So talk about it was when, your day one, your first week, and then compare what it is like now.
First getting started, there was a lot of what my dad talks about often as imposter syndrome, where you just kind of feel like you don't belong and you feel like you're not qualified. And starting out with the umbrella stuff, number one, I had to really learn what it was, because if I was going to try and convince someone to go with us, I needed to know what I was talking about. And so as far as the first week, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly how that went, because to be honest with you, I was just asked this the other day by someone of how long did it take me to get my first client. And I would say that it probably took me several weeks until I landed the first one. But I would say that the first one was definitely the most difficult. And like I said, it was just having the confidence, because I mean, I'm 23 now, but I was 20 whenever I got licensed. So I was a lot younger than pretty much everyone I was speaking to, and I was afraid that they were going to look at me as not a professional, but just like a young kid and stuff. And so that compared to now is night and day. I go in now and have a really good time talking to the people, because a lot of the times they don't know a whole lot about what it is they're trying to buy. And with the experience that I have now, I can go in and educate people. And so instead of feeling like having that imposter syndrome, I don't belong, I'm actually inserting myself into the conversation as the person who's going to be able to advise them and what it is they're trying to obtain. It definitely takes some time, but I'm very, very, very pleased with where we're at now and where we're continuing to head.
I don't think anybody can walk in and have confidence of what they're doing. I mean, no matter what age they're at, I mean, it's just something like you don't know it that way. You're inexperienced. You haven't, went through these processes before. I don't think you can't feel like that, or at least I would be, pretty shocked. Grayson, talk about going through this transition. I think for most people in any business, it looks easier than it actually is. And the learning curve is quite large, especially dealing with so many different companies and sites and moving parts. Would you say the experience was harder than you expected, easier than you expected, about the same?
I would say it was probably a little bit more difficult than what I expected, but that was also because while I didn't necessarily have the confidence when it came to speaking with people or convincing people, I had the confidence within myself that I was going to make whatever needed to work. And I would say that from making the transition to focusing on one particular product, like he said, when we started out, we were really just targeting the umbrella. And then we started getting homeowners carriers, and then we started getting auto carriers and stuff. And I would say that the transition between being a fully fledged personal lines division with a lot of the automation and all the contracts and stuff that we have compared to where we first started, I would say that it was a little more difficult for me to get used to, because one of the things that I learned from one of the carrier conversations we just had a month ago was that you, of course, have production requirements with all of them. And I started to understand, based on some of those conversations, where, hey, maybe sometimes you could suggest a policy that's still saving whoever's looking for a homeowner's policy money, but it might not necessarily be the cheapest quote that we got back because of the fact that it would help us meet those kind of requirements. And it might just be a better company rated financially overall. So I would say those little quirks like that were definitely things that I never had anticipated. I just thought it was, let me do my part to try and get this as lowly priced as possible. But through the experience and conversations and stuff, learning that there's a bit of a different side to being an insurance professional besides just trying to sell someone the cheapest thing you can find.
Well, Brad, you know this too. You got carriers coming in yakking saying, hey, you need to present us every time. You can't do that with every single carrier you have in your arsenal.
And
so
Florida.
It's been good for him to understand the difference in the coverage forms, who has full water, versus a sublimit, who gives you replacement cost on your screen enclosure as opposed to actual cash value or no coverage, or a cheap sublimit. Again, it's part of me being patient to some degree, because these are things that 20 years in, I would just very confidently go in and say, look, I understand you could go with this carrier over here and it's going to be $350 a year cheaper, but let me talk to you about why I'm recommending this. And so he's really learned how to understand the different coverage forms and speak to that. If you look at everything in arrears, man, it always makes sense that it worked out the way it should. And I don't think it was an accident that we started him with monoline umbrella, even though it kind of was. If I would have dumped all of the home and the auto and everything on him day one, Grayson would have found a way to be successful, but it would have also been pretty disastrous for the short term until he could learn all of that stuff. And instead he's been able to, get to where he is over 3 years. And, at that point he's got a comfort level because he does have the knowledge to go with it. It's just, if we wanted to, we could spend our whole lives in seminars and webinars and learning carrier products and all of that and never have time to talk to the lead. So I think he's done a really good job of taking the lead and getting the product knowledge he needs without me spoon feeding it to him or force feeding it to him.
Grayson, talk about, now that you've been in it for a while, tell me what you really like about the industry.
So I would say what I like the most about the industry, besides being able to work as a family inside of the same office and spend the time every day, is just the feeling of being able to help people. Because I would say, one of the things that attracted me to the industry was certainly the earning potential. But, starting out, you're not making very much of anything because you haven't had the book of business built yet. And so I had to find enjoyment outside of the financial benefit just in the process of learning it. And I would say when someone comes to you with an issue, or they've had a terrible experience with their previous agent, or they can't get a phone call returned, they can't get an email returned, and they just come to you and they vent and they have all these issues with how their prior experience was, and you can give them the completely opposite experience in terms of communication, listening to what they're saying, not treating them just like another easy sale. I would say that that's probably what I enjoy the most, is building the relationships with the people in the book of business. Because what I've learned is, in my position with personal lines, is that that's just as important as the price of a policy or things like that. Is people want to feel comfortable that they can send you an email and that they're going to get a response, or that if they call you with something, they're going to get an answer, or just that their policy is going to be reviewed at renewal, or all those things. I would just say that providing people with a good experience is probably what I enjoy the most about the insurance industry.
David, talk a little bit about how proud you are. I can already hear it in your voice, and just how well it's gone, and how special it is to have Grayson on board.
It's great. Some days I feel like it's a younger version of myself, but he's not 100% my DNA. So we have to navigate around some of that, but he, he's done a really good job. And I think that he's exactly where he needs to be. He possesses a level of patience that I don't, to some degree. He can handle the phone calls from the fixed incomes that, want to go on and on about all of the ways that they've been slighted by the insurance industry and everything. And he listens to that and does very well. And I'd be more along the lines of, if you can't afford premium, go get a part-time job somewhere. I mean, there's ways to make things happen in the world, but he's done really, really well there. He does a good job of conducting himself well beyond his years with our carrier partners. But I think probably the thing that I am the most proud of is he demonstrates a level of accountability, regardless of whether or not things are going well or not so well, and knows that he has the ability to determine the ultimate outcome of any situation and does what he needs to do to make it happen. I would love to tell you that that's part of the onboarding and training program at Florida Risk, but that's like the 20-year version that he had before he came, of seeing a lot of things that, you as a parent of now older children, you don't know what sinks in and what doesn't until you have those conversations when they're older. And Grayson can tell you things from when he was 2 or 3 years old that he remembers, that I'll remember it after he said it, but I don't necessarily remember. I have my own memories of things that are really granular, but it's rewarding and also at a peace of mind. The older you get, the more you realize you've already lived the majority of your life. As I'm sitting here on the other side of 50 at this point, the thing I think that's the most important to me is knowing that if something happened to me at any time, he's going to be okay. He has what he needs, and he has the ability to make a living for himself and build his own family. Like, as far as I'm concerned, my fathering work is pretty much done, even though that never ends. The hard part of it with him is over at this point, and it's a very fun season of life. for me to be in. What we haven't talked about is his younger brother is also in the agency. So it's not limited to Grayson. Landon has been here now for a couple of years as well. And he's doing the same thing Grayson did. He's right in the middle of video editing and content creation and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see if he sticks with doing that or if he ends up moving into a role somewhere on the insurance side. But ultimately that's going to be up to him. I don't dictate that. I let them figure out where they want to be. I would ask that question to Grayson, but I do think that that's probably makes it a lot easier on them. That I want him to be honest, but I don't feel like I've ever pressured him to do anything professionally or otherwise that it hasn't been something he's wanted to do. I ultimately want him to be happy, be a good human being, and be able to support a family of his own. If I can check those boxes, how he gets there is really irrelevant.
Grayson, you kind of alluded to it already, but what would you say is the favorite part of working with Dad?
Really just the time that we get to spend with each other and being able to have someone that I know has my best interest in mind. I mean, that was one of the other things why I wanted to get involved in the insurance stuff to begin with was, if I'm going to work hard at any job, why would I not work hard towards something that's going to benefit my family and my future and all that stuff? And so I would say that my favorite part is kind of the team that me and him have established together to where we're both working towards the same goal. And I would say that the way that all that stuff has worked up until now has been the best part. It's not, getting paid hourly and, if you don't mop the floor, someone else will mop it when they come in sort of a deal. Like he said, there's accountability for things that go right and wrong. And I would say that just the dynamic that, us being in control of the success and the future of the family business is probably the most enjoyable part because there's real pressure and there's real result, to come from that. But I would say that's personally my favorite part of it.
Last question for each of you. David, we'll start with you. What advice would you give to someone else that's looking to bring on their child into the agency?
I'm going to give you three things. Number one, make sure it's what they want, not what you want, and let them be led to it on their own. If you force somebody, who knows how it turns out? Maybe it can turn out okay, but I know that I wouldn't want to be forced into something. Number two, be more patient than you ever thought you had to be, because it's going to allow people to learn and it's going to stick better when they do. And number three, don't be so wrapped up in your own ego that you can't admit when you make a mistake and take accountability for some of that as well. It doesn't matter if it's at work or if it's at home. This. Anybody who's a parent out there knows this, but you don't get it right every single time. Heck, man, we're all learning on the job. In some cases we had really great examples from our parents, and in other cases, people haven't. And, I'm not saying that I didn't. I had a great childhood. My dad did everything he had to do, could possibly have done to provide for me. The one thing that I feel like a lot of people get wrong is they don't admit when they were wrong, and they don't admit when they make a mistake. And I think that, maybe it doesn't blow up immediately, but that plants little seeds that ultimately lead to big blow ups down the road. And you don't get the same level of trust from your children if you can't do that. And I think Grayson would agree, he would definitely agree that I'm not perfect. But I think he would also agree that even when I've gotten it wrong, I've come back and cleaned it up.
Grayson, what advice would you have for someone in your position looking to enter into the family business?
Well, are we saying someone who's being encouraged by mom or dad to join, or someone who just has the opportunity and they're trying to decide whether or not they want to ask to join?
Somebody who's actually joining and getting into the business, what would you say to them? What would you, and this can go into just starting the business, even from, getting in and learning it, and not to mention the other dynamic of getting into the family dynamic of it.
Yeah. Well, I would just say if you were a young person who was looking to get into insurance, that it is not nearly as boring as I feel like you might think it is. Like, whenever people hear insurance or like, oh, insurance agent or something, they think that it's extremely boring. But it depends on the person, of course. But like I said, what my favorite part about working in the agency could be the case for a lot of people. You get to have the enjoyment of starting basically at ground zero and developing yourself into who you want to be on the sales side of things and relationships. And I would just say that my life overall has definitely grown in a good direction because of the experience I've gotten from the insurance industry, not only from the, being a producer, but like he said, with making the relationships and things with the network and just all the things that it provides. I know it could be different for anybody, but for me personally, I couldn't have wished for it to have gone any better or a different way. And I enjoy it more and more as time goes on.
I think that's a great place to land this thing. Thank you both for joining us today. This is awesome.